Okay, before I get started properly, I'm just going to do a quick COA for myself. This is the very first time I've taught a class for E-UNI, so if I get nervous, get worried, or anything else like that, please just give me a break. I'm doing my best, and I'd appreciate it if you got some feedback for me afterwards. I'd like to hear it. The other thing is that the Hacking 101 class is a new syllabus. This is the first time this has been run, so it's also possible there'll be things missing or things that are in a weird order. Again, I'd like feedback on those afterwards as well. The final note before we start is that whilst this is booked out for a 2-hour slot, I don't know exactly how long it's going to take. I'm aiming for around an hour, maybe an hour and a half, but we will likely not run to the full extent of the class. Okay, you are here today because you want to know about how to beat the hacking minigame that was introduced in Odyssey. This course assumes before we start that everyone who is here has listened to and understood the Exploration 101 class that is held by the university. All I'm dealing with today is how to beat the sites when you get to them. I'm not going to be teaching you how to find them in the first place. You'll need to go and listen to Exploration 101 for that. Assuming that everyone is fine with that, if you are not, there's an exploration class running at the weekend. I suggest you pick that up, and then all of this will fall into place and start making sense. To get us started, my name is Iri Ryorki. I've been playing E for about 6 or 7 months now, and I've spent 4 or 5 months of that down at the LoSec campus. I spend about 90% of my time out scanning sites down there, which is why most people have not heard me speak on Mumble before. I'm normally off minding my own business. It also gives away the fact that I am unfortunately not a girl, and that upsets some people. Neither am I Edward Snowden for people watching lecture.E-UNI. I'm very sorry. Okay, the class today, the bulk of it is going to be about how to beat the hacking minigame itself. Before we get to that stage though, I'm just going to cover some skills, equipment, and implants that are going to be useful to you, a brief introduction to the site you're going to come across, and then after that we're going to come to tips and tricks about how to beat the game, which are basically my personal opinion that I've built up over 6 months of doing it. Because the class is new, there may be things that I miss, but there may also be things that I've got horrifically wrong, and if you have different opinions, I'll be interested to hear them. If you have questions to ask, please do so in the lecture.E-UNI channel as we're going. Just type Q before you say anything, and then your question afterwards. And if it's relevant, I will, excuse me, if it's relevant for what I'm saying at the moment, I will pick it up. If I don't answer it, either I'm going to get to it soon, or it will be covered later in the class, so please don't be offended. Okay then. To get us started, a brief look at the skills that you're going to need to beat these hacking sites. There are only actually 2 skills you need to be a good hacker. Lots of people say there are a bunch of skills that you need to do scanning, which is true, but once you scan the site down, there are only 2 you need to actually get into the cans themselves. These are hacking and archaeology. If you give me a second, I'll link those for you. These skills basically do exactly the same thing as each other, they just give you access to different types of analyzer and therefore different types of can. For each level you have either of those skills, you get plus 10 to the health of your virus, which we'll come to later. The hacking skill lets you use the data analyzer, which lets you access data sites, and the archaeology skill lets you access use Relic Analyzer, which lets you access cans at Relic sites. These are the only 2 skills you need to be able to open containers at these sites. There is nothing else to it. They are also prerequisites for using, well, I've mentioned it, they're prerequisites for using the equipment you need to open them, so you will have to have at least 1 level in these before you can get started. The more the better, because the more health your virus has, the better you're going to do. Wasn't that easy? Any questions on skills before I go on? Starkovsky. If this is a deep voice for a woman, she must have the worst smoking habit ever. And yes, as Marcus Patang says in, lecture.E-UNI, you need to have level 5 to get the Tech 2 version of these modules. It's a long train to get there. I've been working with the T1 versions up until this point, and it's not really done me any harm. Okay. Oh, sorry, we have a question. A question from Serenity. Is the bonus of the skills working for any kind of site? Serenity, I'm going to assume you mean by that can you use the skills interchangeably on different sites? Is that correct? Okay. The wording of both skills says it gives you plus 10 to your virus coherence. You need to, I guess, imagine in your head that you have a separate virus for hacking the different kinds of sites. You have one virus for archaeology, one virus for relic sites and one virus for data sites. Things that come off the archaeology skill will only affect relic sites. Things that come off the hacking skill will only affect the data sites. It doesn't work between them, unfortunately. So if you have hacking 5 and archaeology 1, you'll have plus 50 to your virus coherence when you're doing data sites and plus 10 when you're doing relic sites. Okay, cool. Let's move on. Looking at ships next. Again, we're going to blast through these quite quickly so we can get to the game itself. You will notice if you've done the Exploration 101 class, the ships that I'm going to talk about now are exactly the same ships that are useful for scanning down sites. It's almost as if they've been designed for doing this. There are, for each race, a T1 frigate that will give you a straight +5 boost to the strength of your virus for both data and relic analyzers. The prereq for these is just Racial Frigate 1, so you should be able to fly any of these straight off the bat for your chosen race. For the Amar, this is the Magnate. Actually, I'm just going to link them all very quickly, bear with me 1 second. The reason I'm just dumping all of these in channel, the Amarian Magnate, the Caldari Heron, the Galente Imicus, and the Minmatar Pro, is because the bonuses that these give you are exactly the same. There is no huge difference between these ships. The only thing that does make a slight difference between them is the layout of the slots. For hacking, you generally don't really care about the low slots or the high slots. You will need, ideally, 2 high slots, which all of these ships will have, one for your cloak and one for your probe launcher. What you do with your lows is entirely up to you. The only difference is how many mid-slots these ships have. Eden, I'm afraid you're wrong, the probe is awesomest, but it's worth saying. The reason you want to have a lot of mid-slots in your hacking frigate is because this is where you're going to put your hacking modules. Ideally, you want to have 4 mid-slots on a hacking ship. This is so you can have a data analyzer and a relic analyzer. These are the things that are going to get you into the cans, and it means you don't have to prioritize one site over the other if you carry both. You want to carry a cargo scanner, so you can scan down what's inside the cans before you hack them. And ideally, you want to have a prop mod, so when something jumps you, you can get out of there very quickly. This means that if you're suffering from having only 3 mid-slots, as the Amarian Magnate does, you're going to have a problem because you either can't fit a prop mod to escape, or you have to give up on your cargo scanner or one of the analyzers. And it does at the T1 level mean the Heron has the advantage because it has 5 mid-slots, in which you can add yourself a shield buffer or some other form of tank module just to give you an extra chance of surviving. Angel, I will come to the modules in just a second. I'll link them when we get there, okay? Okay. Each of the races also has a specialized T2 Covert Ops Frigate that will benefit you in both scanning to find these sites and in hacking once you get here. Again, the bonuses provided by these ships is the same across all the races. They all give you a straight +10 boost in the strength of your virus, as opposed to the +5 given by the T1 frigates. I'm just going to link all of these very quickly for you as well. Okay, so again, we have the Amarian Anathema, the Caldari Buzzard, the Galente Helios, and the Minmatar Cheetah. The slot layout on these ships is actually slightly more balanced. Nothing suffers from having only 3 mid-slots, but both the Buzzard and the Helios have the 5th mid-slot, which will give you a bit extra advantage over the other 2. It doesn't necessarily mean they're better ships, it just means that if you like some flexibility in your mid-slots, they're the ones to pick. Throughout my career, I've worked entirely with Minmatar ships, the probe moving on to the Cheetah, and I've been perfectly happy with them. It hasn't stopped me doing anything, and it lets me get out of fights a little bit faster if they do happen to find me. Okay, that's all I'm going to say on the ships. The advantage they give is just that straight +5 or +10. It's sort of the purview of the Exploration 101 class to have a look at the scanning bonuses from those. They're all pretty equal though, and it's up to you. Pick your favourite race, pick your favourite colour, and pick the one that looks least like a block of cheese. I'm looking at the Cheetah here, and go with whichever one you like the most. Yes, Serenity has just mentioned, chat, that the upcoming Rubicon expansion is introducing 2 new scanning ships that will be eventually included in this class. The two Sisters of Eve ships that are coming up. There is one at frigate class and one at cruiser class. I don't actually have enough information about those at the moment to be included in the class, and I didn't want to complicate my life further for my first attempt at running something by including ships that haven't had their stats finalized yet, so I won't be talking about those today, but I will update the 101 syllabus on the wiki once they've been released, and we can look at the information there. Yes, they are likely to be more powerful than the current T1 offerings. You do need to have both, I believe, Amar and Galente frigates trained to fly them, though. Yes, and as Gangirl has said, because they're new, all the griefers will be out trying to kill you. Okay, moving on to the equipment then. Like I said, it's useful to have 4 mid-slots because there are 4 bits of equipment you're ideally going to be carrying with you. First up, the Data Analyzer. Just let me link it quickly. The Data Analyzer is the bit of equipment that is going to let you hack into data sites, unsurprisingly. It's the one that works in conjunction with your hacking skill, and essentially you need to get within 5k of the can that you want to hack, activate this module, and this is what's going to trigger the minigame as soon as you run this. Both the Data and the Relic Analyzer at the Tech 1 variant have a 5k range, so you need to be quite close to it before you can set it off. I believe if you get up to the T2 variants, it gives you a 6k range, which is kind of a negligible difference, but it does give you a couple of extra boosts with that. The actual effect of these on the hacking minigame is the strength of the virus that you get out of them. By default, the T1 Data Analyzer gives you a virus strength of 20. This combines with the strength you get from your ship to give you your starting virus strength, which is going to be either 25 or 30, depending on whether you're in a T1 or T2 frigate. If you look at the attributes for it, you'll also see it has an access difficulty bonus of 5%. I'm going to be honest with you and say I don't actually have any idea what that stat does. The way before Odyssey the hacking minigame used to work is you would activate your hacking module on this, on your can. You would then just orbit it while the hacking module did its thing, and sooner or later it'd say you've passed or you've failed. I'm guessing the access difficulty bonus is a holdover from that as your analyzers got better, it gives you a higher chance of succeeding. Okay, the second module we're going to be carrying is the Relic Analyzer. This one is easy. It is exactly the same as the Data Analyzer, except this one will let you access relic sites and it is linked with your Archaeology skill. If you check the Variations tab in each of these things, you'll see that there are no variations really. You can either have Relic Analyzer 1 or Relic Analyzer 2. I guess CCP decided that there wasn't enough interest in how fast or how good your hacking can be to bother putting in any meta versions. Johnny Ant asks, how big is the gap between T1 and T2 versions of the equipment? Are the 22 days worth of training worth it for a young character? The most immediate bonus you're going to get from these, Johnny, is that the T2 versions give you a virus strength of 30, which if you're flying a T2 cruiser then stacks up to 40. It's a matter of some debate, at least it was when I asked for opinions on this on the forums, as to how much of a bonus this actually gives you. It does mean that when you get into the hacking minigame, you'll be able to one-shot some modules that you otherwise wouldn't have been, and it's going to make your life easier. But I don't have the skills yet to be using the Tech 2 versions of any of this equipment, and I've been fine up until this, so it's probably not worth it when you're first starting out. There are better things like getting a decent tank to worry about first. Okay, the third piece of equipment that you're going to want to stick in a mid-slot is your cargo scanner. The cargo scanner is kind of an unloved module. It was for me when I started playing, because I couldn't think of any reason other than being a dirty pirate that I want to be scanning down the contents of another ship. But someone has discovered that you can use these to scan down the contents of the relic and data cans before you try and access them. We'll talk in a minute about what sorts of loot you're going to get from these sites, but it is very, very worth knowing before you start hacking them what is inside the can, because it lets you prioritize which bits of loot you pick up when they come out. So having a cargo scanner is very recommended. And please don't ask me about the bonuses from Tech 2 and meta versions of this, because I don't know. I use Cargo Scanner 1, it's served me fine so far. So yeah, Johnny's pretty quick off the mark there. The differences between the Tech and meta versions are the range you can activate it from and the cycle time. so it'll save you a couple of seconds, but it's not a massive difference. Thank you, Johnny. Okay, like I say, the last mid slot is ideally reserved for prop mod. You could theoretically put a tank in there instead, but to be honest, if something is jumping you, your best bet is to be trying to get out of there as fast as possible. There's no point trying to tank it, but if you can't get away, they're going to kill you sooner or later. I've been using an afterburner myself because it can't get warp scrolled. Hacking a can, cross fingers, myself a big target. Yet. Geoforce has a question. I saw Wormhole Space Imicus fit, and he had 4 Data Analyzer 1s fitted. Do the coherence and the strength stack? As far as I'm aware, Geoforce, they do not. I've got no idea what that person would have been thinking with their fit. If anyone knows otherwise, though, then please speak up in lecture.E-UNI or interrupt me here. Okay, general consensus from the channel is that you can't do that. Geoforce will assume this person was drunk when they fit their ship. Okay, the last bit of equipment I'm going to talk about are the implants that are going to help you doing this. There are 3 we're going to look at. The downside of these is they all fit into slot 9 of your implants, so you can only have one of these installed in your clone at any given time, so you have to pick carefully what you want. 2 of them, like the skills and like the bits of equipment, cover relic sites and data sites. Let me look at those quickly. Okay, we have the Protec Prospector Hacking HC905 and the Protec Prospector Archaeology AC905. These have the same effect as each other, just affecting either relic or data sites respectively, which is to give you an extra +5 virus coherence, which is your virus health, when you're accessing these containers. There aren't any stronger versions of these implants, unfortunately. These are the only ones that exist. So if you do find that you're struggling, you're always falling slightly short on health, you might want to consider putting one of these in for your can of choice. The third implant you may wish to consider is the Protec Prospector Environmental Analysis. In my opinion, this one has a slightly more useful effect than the other 2. If you have this installed, it decreases your cycle time, which you may find useful if you're doing salvage. For hacking and archaeology, that's a negligible benefit. But it also means that once you've finished hacking a container, the cans will stay on grid with you for an extra 5 seconds, allowing you to pick up 1 or, if you're lucky, 2 more cans than you would otherwise have got. It is extremely frustrating when you see the can you want vanish just as you're about to click it, so I've found this one particularly useful. For what it's worth, if you have done the Exploration 101 class, you'll probably know it. There are a bunch of other Protec Prospector implants that will help you out scanning sites down as well. I don't know entirely what slot they go into, but if you're having difficulty scanning, you may want to look at the Protec Prospector range in general and have a look at what's available for you. Okay, before I get onto the sites and the game properly, just a quick break. Any questions up until this point? Okay, everyone seems cool, so I'm going to go on. When you're finding sites... sure. Sorry, who is that? Lord Divinity, are you alright? Okay. Okay. We're looking today in particular at relic and data sites. You may have guessed that from the amount of times I've said those words so far. It is worth noting that when you're scanning stuff down, you are going to find some other kinds of sites as well. You'll see wormholes, combat sites, and gas sites all popping up when you're looking for things. I'm not really going to be talking about those today. Wormholes and combat sites are way outside the remit of this class. There are apparently some gas sites that will have in them you can hack. I'm yet to find one myself, so I don't know if this is true or not. But it may be worth bearing in mind that if you see a gas site and you can't find anything else to look at, you may want to go and look at that on the off chance that it's one that has containers there. The only difference is that if you fail to hack a container at a gas site, it's going to apparently spawn a bunch of bad guys on your head, so you might want to get out of there quick if you fail one of them. Okay, so Vercon has just said in channel, the gas sites are combat/hacking sites, so you need to have both a combat ship and a scanning ship available to you if you're going to be doing those. So, relic and data sites. I'm going to start with what is similar about these sites, and then we'll go on to look at what's different between them afterwards. When you land on grid with either of these, you're going to find yourself somewhat near some weird celestial anomaly, be it a coral reef or some abandoned spaceship or something like that. And if you switch to your looting tab, which you should have set up if you got the EVE University overview set properly, you'll see there will be a bunch of diamonds on the view with you, which represent the different cans that you can hack into. For both kinds of site, there are 4 different kinds of can that you're going to see coming up. These vary in difficulty, you can tell based on their names, so I'll go into those in a bit more detail once we get to them. What you're going to want to do when you arrive is find the closest to you, or if you're feeling under time pressure, the can that you think is going to have the best loot in. Make your way towards that, and when you get within range of it, lock it up, scan it down with your cargo scanner and see if what's inside is worth having, and then activate either your Data Analyzer or your Relic Analyzer on it to start the hacking minigame. That is the same across both of these sites. The layouts of the cans will be different, and it's nice to go and see all the different abandoned space sites you're going to find as you're doing this. What's going to be different about them is what you're going to see on your cargo scanner and what is going to be ejected out of them. When you're looking at relic sites, scan them down with your cargo scanner before you begin. You're likely going to find a lot of construction material or salvage material inside these sites. These are going to be odd items that have blue or orange backgrounds and will have names like power circuit or damaged shield disrupt array or things like that. These are your bread and butter money makers of Relic, and they are contained. Sorry, excuse me, I'm just going to have a little drink. Okay, Johnny Ant has just started the channel. Is there any way to get the mini cans on the overview? As far as I'm aware, Johnny, there isn't. I have been trying. If someone knows how, I would love to hear it. And actually, before I go down this road of describing the cans to you, I'm just going to say what happens when you beat the game. If you're successful in your hacking attempt, the can that you've been hacking is going to spew out a bunch of containers into space. You have to click on these containers to tractor them into you. Each of these ships has a magical tractor beam that you don't have to fit into any of your modules for this purpose. It has a 3-kilometer range, so you need to grab the cans before they get out of range of you. But guess cans are going to have the good loot in, which is why it helps know beforehand what's going to happen. There are, I believe, 5 different kinds of can that can pop out of this. They're going to be parts cans, materials cans, data cans, scraps cans, and equipment cans. Basically, you're going to want to prioritize different cans based on what you're trying to pick up out of these sites. So yeah, when you're working on a relic site, they're going to primarily have construction materials and salvage in them. These materials and salvage are going to be contained in the parts containers and in the materials containers. So when you're at a relic site, you're mostly going to be picking up parts containers and material containers that are spewed into space. If you have done a cargo scan on your can and you see that there is a blueprint copy inside or a skill book, both of which you can find at relic sites, blueprint copies and skill books will both be contained in the data cans. If you want the skill book, or if it looks like a particularly expensive blueprint, you want to get the data cans as well as the parts and the materials. At the relic sites, the scrap cans are entirely pointless. Ignore those at all costs. And there is only one item that you're going to find that will be in the equipment cans that is worth having. I've temporarily forgotten the name of it. I'll come back to that one later. The spatial attunement unit. If you see a spatial attunement unit on your cargo scan, that is going to be an equipment container. But yeah, by and large, you want to pick up parts and materials, data if you want some blueprints or skill books, or equipment if you see a spatial attunement unit. Dehydra asks, can these cans be webbed? I must admit, Dehydra, I have never tried doing that. I wouldn't imagine so, though. Actually, you can't lock the cans up, so no, you can't. You just click on them and tractor them in. That's all you can interact with them. Ion Black Knight asks why the materials cans. As far as I can tell, Ion, the salvage and the parts that are going to come out of these, I know it's confusing calling them parts when they're not actually in the parts containers all the time, is they are split equally across parts and materials cans. You can't tell which one they're going to be in between the two of them, so you have to pick up all of both of them. It would have been nice if they'd made it sensible, so the working parts go in parts and the broken good parts go in materials, but they haven't done that. Parts and materials contain both the working bits and the broken salvage. Okay, The stuff that's going to spawn at the data sites. I should say, for what it's worth, that you may find on occasion some other bits and pieces in these cans. If I haven't spoken about them, though, they are generally not worth your time picking up. These cans will have some low-value, high-volume loot in them that is going to fill up your frigate very quickly, and it's not going to earn you much money. I'd only worry about picking up the things that I'm speaking about today. So yeah, the data sites. Sort of counterintuitively, when you're in a data site, these are going to have more bits in data cans that aren't worth picking up. In these ones, you're more likely to find things that are going to be low value, high volume. So again, just pay attention to what I'm talking about now and ignore the rest of it. In these, you're going to find, oh Christ, I've forgotten the name. Bear with me 1 second. I'll find you an example. There we go. These are decryptor items. These go for a lot of money, and they take up basically no space, so these are going to be very good for you to try and find. There is another kind of item in them that I have forgotten the name of entirely. There will be a silver circle with some blue lines around it. Slightly less valuable, but they're also worth picking up. You will also find in datasets, as with relic sites, you may occasionally see blueprint copies, and you may see skill books. These will be in the data if you want to pick them up. Thank you, Verken. The data cores are exactly what I was talking about. And the data cores and the decryptors are all going to be in the parts containers. This means that when you're hacking a data site, you don't really want to go for the data containers unless you've seen a blueprint or a skill book. You want to concentrate solely on the parts containers. Forget about the materials. The stuff in materials is not worth having. I know I bungled my way through that a little bit, but hopefully it made sense to everyone. Are there any questions about that? Good, I must have done better than I thought then. Okay, you can tell before you start hacking how difficult the container is going to be to access. This is based on their name. When you're at a relic site, in order of easiest containers, hardest containers, they go debris, rubble, remains, and ruins. The hard containers are going to have different modules in. The modules are going to have more ability to shut you down and destroy your virus, but if you hack them, they are more likely to have good stuff in them. Okay, does that sound bad for everybody? Okay, good. It's one of the disadvantages of living in a tiny village in the middle of nowhere is my internet connection is not fantastic. Okay, while we're talking about how difficult the cans are, it is worth pointing out that you will only get the easy cans in high-sec, which means in high-sec you're only going to find the debris and rubble for relic sites, and comm towers and info shards for data sites. When you move into low-sec, you'll find the slightly harder cans, the remains of relic sites, and mainframes of data sites. Okay, apparently I'm still having some sound troubles, bear with me 1 second. Right, it's because my girlfriend has just dumped a load of stuff in our shared Dropbox folder. Give me 1 second to disable that. Okay, is that sounding better? I lost the robot voice. Okay, thank you. Let's carry on. I'll make a mental note to disable Dropbox before I start next time. So yeah, the sites will get harder as you move out. You'll find the two easiest kinds of sites in high-sec. You'll find the medium difficulty site in low-sec, as well as the other two. And you'll find the hardest sites and the best suits only in null-sec. This means if you want to get the most out of your hacking career, you're going to have to go to places that get progressively more dangerous to make more money. Bear in mind, for those of you who are part of youth university, you're not allowed to go into soft null, which means that space in NPC null, which is basically the Great Wildlands and Syndicate, tends to get a little bit choked up with people. You need to find lonely stretch of road there, or a quiet time of day if you don't have any luck. Okay, everyone happy with the sites and which containers they want to be picking up? Yep, as Gangirl has just said it in the channel, you may have wished to get an out-of-court port to go and do your scan software for you. Okay, apparently I'm still having sound problems, so I'm just going to reboot Mumble and try and disconnect a few other things. 1 second. Hello again, is this sounding any better? Gosh, that's just harsh. Okay, it seems to be better for most people, so I'm going to continue. Those of you who it's still not working for, I'm sorry, I'm not sure there's much else I can do about this. I'll have a look at my microphone when I'm outside of this class. Okay, if everybody is happy with what we've covered so far, I'm now going to move on to the meat of this class, which is the hacking mini-game itself. I'm going to link a picture for you in chat, which I want you to have a look at. It is a hacking board with everything you can possibly see uncovered. I'm going to go through one by one and deal with what each of the different things you can see is and what they do. Okay. I'm afraid I'm just going to have to carry on this moment. There's not too much else I can actually change at this end unless it gets so terrible you can't understand me. So yeah, I'd like to thank whoever it was that took this for me in the first place. I have to admit it wasn't me. I found it on the Odyssey exploration of, but it's a fantastic example of everything you're going to see on a hacking board. And hopefully I'm going to work through these in logical order that's going to help you understand what's going on. When you start the hacking minigame, the objective is to get your virus to the data core at the other end or somewhere on the map. And you're going to defeat that data core by reducing its coherence to 0. To start with, though, we'll have a look at what your virus actually is and what it does. This is shown in the bottom left hand of the screen as the circular icon with an orange bar on the left and a red bar on the right. The orange bar on the left of this circular icon is your coherence. This is your virus's health. Once your coherence is reduced to 0, the hacking minigame ends. It will tell you that the site you're trying to hack is too complex for you and your virus has been beaten. The red bar on the right is your virus's strength. This is how much damage you inflict to the enemy coherence when you attack something. Obviously, having both of these as high as possible is a good thing. For what it's worth, the numbers you can see, the number at the top is the exact figure of your coherence, and the number at the bottom is your exact strength. All defensive subsystems in the system core that you come across are going to have coherence and a strength of their own. So it's worth watching what the enemy has based against what you have and making the decisions appropriately. Okay. Lara Divinity asks, how do you get more health and strength, more coherence and strength? Your coherence will get big bonuses based on your archaeology or your hacking skills. If you remember, they give you plus 10 to your coherence per level of the skill you have to your coherence. That's 50 extra strength. 50 extra coherence. Sorry, there are too many similar words here that I'm just getting confused at the moment. If you want to get your strength up, your strength based on your ship, so the T1 frigs give you plus 5, T2 frigs give you plus 10, and it is based on your analyzer module. The basic analyzer gives you 20, and the T2 analyzer gives you 30. So you're going to have between 25 and 40 strength based on those. I've spent most of my career with a strength of 30, which is based on a T1 data module and a T2 frigate. And with a strength of 30, you can get into the hardest containers. It's just a bit hit and miss sometimes. Johnny asks, do you also have rigs installed? The rigs I have installed in my scanning rig are ones that help me scan the sites down better rather than ones that help me access the cat. It is actually possible that there are rigs that will help you access these better. I haven't thought to include those in the syllabus, so just look in the shop, see if they can dig out some rigs that look like they'd be useful and link them in the chat. That would be very good. Well, that's something I'll be adding to the syllabus after this class. Bear with me, I'm just having a quick look at what the rigs do myself. Okay, so each of those rigs will give you plus 10 to your virus coherence. That's another way of buffing your virus's health up is by having these rigs fitted. It looks like one of them is for relic sites and one is for data sites, as with most other things we've looked at today. Okay, jumping back to the board. The icons that you'll see most of, as they are the ones that's going to be all you see when you first start a game, are the small green circles with some slightly square, brighter green brackets inside. These are nodes that you have not yet explored, or not yet uncovered, however you choose to look at it. These are the locations that you can go to next as you're moving around the board. As you uncover a node, you will therefore unlock all of the adjacent nodes to it that can also then be uncovered. So, to start with, you only have one uncovered node, which is where you've entered the system. You get a bunch of all the adjacent nodes to you that can be uncovered. You pick the one that you want, and then move outwards and around the board by uncovering adjacent node after adjacent node. Once you click one of these green covered nodes, they'll become an orange circle with nothing inside, hopefully, which is an uncovered node that is empty. So just to say that slightly more concisely, a small green circle with green brackets inside is somewhere you have not yet explored but is explorable. An orange circle with nothing inside is a node that you've already been to. The way you're going to find extra things when moving around these boards is that when you uncover one of your unexplored nodes, rather than just turning into an orange circle, it may turn into a bunch of other different things. And these are the defensive modules, the utility modules, or data caches. A data cache is when it turns into an orange circle that has a bright orange filled circle inside it. This means that there is something there, but it isn't immediately obvious. You can, if you wish, ignore the data cache and move on to some more unexplored nodes. Or you can click on the data cache to uncover what is there. It is worth bearing in mind the data cache is not always friendly. There's an equal chance that it is going to be an offensive module as there is of it being a module that's going to help you. If you're already in a tight bind, it may be worth ignoring the data caches and exploring the rest of the board first, then coming back to the data cache later if you absolutely have to, and hoping that it's something that's going to help you. Otherwise, you're just going to put an extra obstacle in your way. Okay, I'm going to take a quick look at the 4 modules that are going to help you, the utility subsystems. Where you find these subsystems will be based on how difficult the can is that you're trying to hack. 2 of them will be in all containers, a third one will only be in the medium or higher containers, and the 4th one will only be in the hardest of containers. The 2 that are everywhere are, number 1, the self-repair unit. This is the spanner icon. Self-repair unit is a way of regenerating your own coherence when you're in the middle of hacking something. Once you've picked up the self-repair, it will appear in the bar of available subsystems at the bottom. And once you click on it in that bar, for every move you make for the next 3 moves, it will regenerate a certain amount of coherence to you. I've spent a little while trying to work out if there is a formula for how much it's going to regenerate you. I haven't got one yet, unfortunately. It appears to be, though, the harder the can, the less it regenerates. But the less health you have, the more it regenerates. I don't know if that is correct. It's the best I can do based on the experience I've had, though. You'll get less health in more difficult cans, but it does seem to help you out by giving you a boost when you're almost dead. Once you pick one of these, it's worth activating it as soon as you possibly can, because the effect lasts over 3 turns, and it's possible if you're already low on health, you're going to have to attack something before those 3 turns are up and go in without enough health and get yourself killed. So activate these as soon as you pick them up, and it'll then free up the slot for you to use something else. The second module, or second utility subsystem, is the kernel rot. This is the one that looks like a piece of A4 paper that's just gone through a shredder and then been pulled out halfway through. You will find these in all levels of containers, much like the self-repair. When you pick up the kernel rot, click on it at the bottom of the screen to activate it, and then click on one of the defensive subsystems, and the kernel rot will immediately halve the defensive subsystem's coherence. This is one that you want to save when you've got something that's got an extremely high coherence rating that you want to get down as soon as possibly. You can halve it straight away and then worry about what's left. Okay, the next utility subsystem, and this one will only be found in lowsec and nullsec, is the polymorphic shield. This is the icon that, unsurprisingly, looks like a shield. When you activate the polymorphic shield by clicking on it from the bar at the bottom, the next 2 times you attack something, that thing will not be able to attack you back. The shield will absorb what has been done to your coherence. Obviously then you want to save the polymorphic shield when you have to attack something that has a very high attack rating itself, so you can negate that attack and it doesn't affect you and doesn't destroy your coherence. The last utility subsystem, the last one that's on your side, is the secondary vector. This is the white circle with a sort of faded white arrow inside of it. You will only find these in cans in nullsec. And what the secondary vector does is once you've activated it, you click on a defensive subsystem you want to destroy, and over the next 3 turns, it will take 20 health off of that container without you having to do anything else. So you can go and uncover more things elsewhere on the board and let this secondary vector do its thing. My personal recommendation for secondary vectors will be to save them until you come across a virus suppressor, so we'll get onto those in just a second. These virus suppressors are a big pain in the bum, and it's good to be able to get rid of them as soon as you can by using a secondary vector and not getting yourself killed in the process. Okay, just quickly while I have a little mouthful of water, and any questions about your utility subsystems, the ones that are going to help you. I'm going to take the silence as a no and carry on. Yep, Johnny, I'm going to come to that in just a second, but it's a very good point. Okay, the defensive subsystems. These are the things that are going to come up green on the minigame. These are the things that are going to stop you, get in your way, and otherwise make your day more difficult. As for utility subsystems, there are 4 different ones that are going to come up. 2 of them will come up in all kinds of container. 1 will only come up in low-sec and null-sec, and the last one will only come up in null-sec. So again, life gets harder the further out and vice versa. The first one is the firewall. This is the triangular shape, hexagon I suppose. Excuse me, sorry. The firewall has an extremely high rating and extremely high coherence, but it doesn't have a particularly high offensive rating. It doesn't have a high strength. Basically, they're going to be there to get in your way, to make you waste turns trying to get through them, but they're not going to do you a massive in return. If you can, with the firewall, just avoid it. Explore the rest of the grid first. Open up all of the uncover all of the nodes. And then if you can't find your system core that you're looking for anywhere else, then come back and start attacking the firewalls. The second up is the antivirus. This is the flip side of the firewall, basically. It's something that has quite a low coherence, it can be destroyed reasonably quickly, but it has a high offensive rating. It's going to do you a lot of damage per hit. These are a good target to use your polymorphic shields on because it negates the damage they're going to do you in return. I suppose now is probably a good time to talk about what Johnny has mentioned in the channel, so this will make sense to you. When you are attacking something, the way the attack works is when you click on it, your strength is taken from their coherence. If they are still alive after this, their strength is then taken from your coherence. So if you kill it in that hit, it doesn't get a chance to damage you in return. The antivirus and the firewall are kind of as bad as each other. You'd think that attacking the one with a weak offensive stat is a better option, but to be honest, you're going to have to spend twice as many moves getting through it, so it's going to do you twice as many sets of damage in return, and they generally work out sort of equal. It's also worth bearing in mind you could use your kernel rot against the antivirus, because that will immediately harm it and give you the opportunity of killing it in one hit before it gets a chance to damage you at all. Okay. The third kind of defensive subsystem, one that you will only find in low-sec and in null-sec, is the restoration node. In my personal opinion, and I think the opinions of a few people on the channel, the restoration node is the worst thing that you're going to come across. Whilst the restoration is on the board, for every move you make, the restoration node is going to pick another defensive subsystem at random and restore some of its health. The longer you leave this thing on the board, the harder it's going to be to get anything else done, because by the time you get to it, everything will have such a high coherence you can't get through it. You want to destroy the restoration node as soon as humanly possible and stop it wrapping everything else. Johnny, I entirely echo your sentiment, but I'm not allowed to use bad language on Rumble. Okay, so as soon as you see a restoration node come up, sorry, I haven't described the last one. The restoration node is the square brackets with like 6 little lines coming off the outside of it. It has an even lower attack stat than the firewall, so you're not going to take much damage destroying it, but it has quite a high defensive stat, so you're going to need to take a few moves to destroy it. This is where having the 40 virus strength is going to be useful, because the restoration node will only get a chance to rep. If you have below 40, it's going to get at least 2 reps off on other things. 1-2 asks, does it restore or does it improve? Can it make things stronger than they already were in the beginning? It improves. If it decides to target something that already has full health, it will then put it above full health. You can get things, if you leave this running, in the thousands of coherence. You've got no chance of killing them. Yes, Marcus, sorry, I'll say his name right one day. Marcus Patang says it doesn't affect system cores, which is correct. If the system core is already on the board, it's probably not going to get hit by this. Okay, the last defensive subsystem is the virus suppressor. This will only come up when you're scanning in nullsec. Whilst the virus suppressor is on the board, it is going to reduce your strength. It is going to make it harder for you to kill things by making your attack weaker. As with some of the other things, I haven't been able to work out the exact maths on this. My best guess at the moment is that it takes 15 off of your strength, which if you're on 30 will take you down to 15, if you're on 40 will take you down to 25. This makes it a lot harder for you to kill other things. This is why it's a good idea to be using your secondary vector on these things, because the secondary vector is not affected by this reduction. That will still do a flat 20 damage to these per turn. So if you see a virus suppressor come up, don't bother trying to attack anything else unless you can't avoid it, because the virus suppressor is going to make your attack useless. You're going to take twice as much damage killing things. You want to try and get a secondary vector onto this as soon as possible. Use one you already have, or uncover some data caches and try and find one. Hope for the best. If you end up in the unlucky situation of having a restoration node and a virus suppressor on the board at the same time, you might as well hang up your hat and go home, because you're going to have an extremely tough time beating that can. Sorry once again to go through the descriptions. The virus suppressor is the square icon with a small square inside. The antivirus, which I realized I missed, is sort of like a pudgy green circle with the four corners going out into little spouts. Xanthrax asks, if you try again to hack a can, do you come across the same things or does it change? It changes every time. So if you fail to beat one board, if you then try hacking the can again, the board layout and the modules will be different the second time round. You can have 2 attempts on a can before it will self-destruct. I don't know how failing to hack something causes it to suddenly self-destruct, but there we go. So if you fail the first time, you can still go back and have one more attempt at it before it's gone. If you fail the first attempt and succeed at the second attempt, the only difference that's going to happen is if you succeed, it's going to spawn more cans into space. It will have the same amount of loot available, but it's going to spawn loads more junk cans, so it's going to have a harder time for you to pick out the ones you actually want. There's a greater chance of you picking up a can. So it's in your best interest to beat it on the first go if you can, and not just give up and have a second attempt. Okay, the last icon that's going to show up on the board is the system core. This is 2 arrows pointing inwards that will either be green if you're in one of the easier cans, yellow if you're in a difficult medium can, or red if you're in a hard can. And the system core's strength, actually all of the defensive subsystem strength and coherence will get higher the further out you go. The harder the can is, the tougher this stuff is going to be to destroy, and the harder it's going to hit you back. Johnny Ant asks, if I fail the first time and leave, will the next person have 1 or 2 attempts? The next person will have only 1 attempt, which is a great way of messing someone else's day up. That limit is therefore per can, not per player. Okay, the idea of the system core is this is the thing that you want to destroy to beat the game. The second you destroy the system core, the minigame ends and the container starts spewing loot out into space. So before you destroy the core, you want to make sure that you're in the place you want to be to pick up this stuff. When the loot starts spewing, it will spew in a 180-degree hemisphere based on your current position. So nothing is going to come out the other side and immediately start flying away from you. But if you're orbiting the can at the time, if it starts coming out at one stage, you then orbit around to the other side, you're going to be miles away from it already. So you want to stay still when you're doing this. The system core itself, again, it has quite a low strength. It's not going to do you much damage, but its coherence, its health, is going to go up as you move out into more difficult sites. All those different things make sense to people. Okay, I'm going to go on. The last part I'm going to talk about in terms of the hacking game is the moves that are available to you. Oh, sorry, Ion Blacklight has asked, is there a best way to navigate around? Ion, the best thing you can do to take the least amount of damage and have the biggest effect on these boards is to go through all of your unexplored nodes first. If you come across a data cache, ignore it because it might be something bad. If you come across a firewall or an antivirus, ignore it and try and find another way around. Don't attack things unless you have no other choice. Obviously, if you're unlucky enough to come across a restoration node, you want to kill it as soon as possible. But otherwise, try and navigate and find the system core without having to kill anything. There is something we'll come on to a bit later where there is an untrue belief that the system core is always on the opposite side of the board from where you begin. This is not the case. The system core is placed randomly, so you want to move around. Don't aim for the other side of the board, I guess is what I'm saying. Ion has also asked, is it good to go around the edges? It won't make technically any difference because there's just as much chance of finding anything at the edge as there is finding it in the middle. I do personally, though, go around the edge first because it gives you an easy thing to aim for. You don't have to think about which move to make next. Just come up with a system that works for you and act quickly because you want to spend as little time doing this as possible to minimize the risk yourself at. Jua Kali says a good to be is 2 kilometers above the can. That is certainly one way of doing it. When we get onto the tips and tricks section at the end of this, and then open up to Q&A at the end, we'll have a few other alternatives on what we can do there. Starkovsky asks, when it spews the cans, is it possible for the group or fleet to loot them all simultaneously, or do they lock up when it's opened? If there are multiple people on grid, anybody can pick up the can. It does count if they're not part of your fleet or they're not friendly to you, stealing if you take someone else's can. So it's worth bearing that in mind. It's against the university's rules and great rules of engagement to steal someone else's can if they have hacked it. But you can bring extra people with you, which gives you a better chance of picking up the loot if you want to do it that way. Johnny, are you reading ahead of my notes or something? Johnny's just said, if you have to kill 2 of the same kind of defensive system, pick the one that gives you access to the most other nodes. So find the one that's hiding most of the grid from you. If there is something that's shielding one node, ignore that one and go for the one that's shielding 20 nodes because you're more likely to find in those 20 nodes the system core as you are in that one node. Rashar points out, if you are doing this in teams, you can't take a can that someone else is already tracking. That is correct. Okay. Look, the last bit I'm talking about is the moves that are available to you. There are 5 different moves. I know it seems like a bit of a weird thing to have to explain to people, but given that a couple of the nodes have per move effects, it's worth understanding what you're going to do is going to trigger these. We're talking specifically about the restoration node, secondary vector, and your self-repair. All of those will have a per move effect. The first and most obvious move is clicking on one of the green covered nodes to uncover it. This counts as one move. It shows you what's underneath it. That one is pretty easy. Next up is clicking on a data cache to reveal its content. It will go from being the bright orange circle to being something else, maybe good, maybe bad, but doing that will count as one move. Third is if you have a utility subsystem that you have not yet picked up, as in it's still sat on the board and not in the tray at the bottom, clicking on that utility subsystem will pick it up, and that counts as one move. Once it's in your tray at the bottom, you have to click it again to activate it. That will count as a second move. And lastly, the most important one, clicking on any of the defensive subsystems to attack them counts as a move. Like I say, I know it seems like a bit of a daft thing to have to go through with you, but given the restoration node might be out there pumping things health per move, you want to minimize the amount of moves you make to destroy it. It's often not worth activating one of your modules to destroy it because it's going to give it an extra time to do something for that move you take to activate it. Okay. The stage I'm at now, we're going to move on to the tips and tricks section in just a second. Does everybody feel like so far they understand how to beat this game and how to deal with the different nodes you're going to come across? Okay, there's some good responses in the channel, so I'm going to move on into the next part. If you do have any outstanding questions for what it's worth that you don't want to ask in front of everybody else, I'm going to be sitting in this classroom for 10 minutes, say, after the class. You can hang around afterwards and ask me then, that's fine. Okay, you all know how to beat the can now. It's nice and easy once you know what you're doing. The tips and tricks section at the end is covering stuff that I have learned from doing this myself. These are going to come at you in sort of random order because they're just written down as I thought of them. These are how to get better at beating the can and how to survive whilst doing it. Your worst enemy whilst you're doing hacking is going to be people who are out in stealth bombers. For what it's worth, stealth bombers is kind of a scary word to be throwing around when you're hacking. They're not as bad as you think they're going to be because most stealth bombers are going to be stupid and have torpedoes fit. Torpedoes do naff damage to frigates. What they will do is sit on a data or relic site, wait for someone to be halfway through a hacking minigame, uncloak right next to you and lock you up straight away. If they fit their ship sensitively, they'll have a warp scram and a web, which is going to make getting away very difficult. But I've discovered most of the time they have a scram and assume that you're going to be using a micro warp drive, which I recommend fitting an afterburner because the scram won't affect it. It is also worth, as someone said earlier, fitting a load of warp stabilizers in your low slots if you have some spare and don't know what to do with them. So yeah, stealth bombers are going to be your enemy. You also do have to keep a good eye out for other things like other people's probes on D-scan, because that means either someone else is looking for the site so they can have it themselves, or someone else is looking for the site so they can put a stealth bomb on it and kill you. So your best friend while you're doing this is going to be the D-scan. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about how to use the scan in this class. There is a D-Scanner 101, and there's loads of articles on the wiki about it. If you don't know how to use the D-Scan, you've not read these articles, I thoroughly recommend you go and do that, especially if you're going to go into low-sec and null-sec. These are where you're going to get the money. It's also where you're going to get ganked by people. For those who have no idea what I'm talking about at all, the D-Scan essentially works as a sonar coming out from your ship. You press the scan button, it sends out a pulse and returns what else is in system with you up to about 14.5 AU. So keep an eye on your D-scan, look for other ships, look for probes, look for combat probes, and look for stealth bombers. Anything that looks like it's coming towards you very quickly is going to be a problem. You want to move away from your can and cloak up as soon as you can before something else lands on grid with you. You are going to end up sacrificing some of your cans because you want to get away and cloak before something lands, rather than hang around and hacking it. You will sometimes think, I have the extra 5 seconds, I can hack this, I can grab this last piece of loot. The one time you can't, you're going to kick yourself for it, so I'd recommend moving away and hiding as soon as humanly possible. Yes, Rashar has just linked exactly what I'm talking about. Well, actually not exactly. If you look at the kill that Rashar has just put in channel, you'll see that he was actually killed by another T2 Covert Ops Frigate rather than a stealth bomber. It comes on to another good point. If you see someone else flying a probing ship, either the T1 or the T2 variants on the D-scan, do not assume that they are not going to attack you. Even the university has articles on how to use your covert ops in combat. So if someone else lands on grid, you're in a cheater, they're in a cheater, you think, they're just looking for some money. Don't, because it may be that they've got their mid-slots kitted out to scram you, web you, and they're assuming that you're going to let them get close because you don't think they're a threat. Don't trust anyone else who lands on grid with you again, because one time you do and they mess you up, you're going to regret it. You're going to lose millions of ISK. Basically, what you may get from this is that being an explorer full-time makes you extremely paranoid of every other player in the game, and I think that's a pretty good way to be. Okay, next tip. Check the people who are in local with you. Like if you're scanning in wormhole space, obviously this is not available to you, but everywhere else you'll have a list in local of all the other pilots who are in system with you. When you are cloaked up, before you start doing anything else, double-click all the names in local, have a look at their profiles, and see who it is that's got terrible security status. Someone who has a bad sex stat is more likely to be a ganker, it's more likely to be a griefer than someone who has a good sex stat. This isn't a guaranteed thing. People who have high security status can still find you and can still kill you. But if you walk into a system and there are 10 people with an extremely low security status, all from the same corp there, you may want to think about just moving on, because if they see you on D-scan, they're going to come out looking for you and they're going to kill you. Contrarily, if you see some people with a high security status, don't assume they're not going to kill you, but you probably have slightly less to worry about. Whilst we're talking about local, once you've finished looking at every individual who is in there, making sure they're not going to be a threat to you, or at least a threat you think you can manage, highlight one of them and press Ctrl A. You can try this now. What will happen is that it will select everybody in your local list. When I say select one of them, you click on one of the names on the right-hand side and press Ctrl A. Then don't click anything else in that box. Go back to whatever else you were doing, and it will keep all those people selected. What this means is that when someone new comes into system, they will not be selected on that list. You can immediately pick up when someone has arrived, and you can see who it is very quickly. Have a look at them, and then Control A everybody again. I know that when you're in the middle of a hacking minigame, you sometimes do lose track of this, but again, this is all in your best interest in the long run. Okay, I've lost count of what number tip I'm on. Tip 5 maybe, let's go with that. Your Data Analyzer and your Relic Analyzer are going to have auto-repeat switched on by default. This is a holdover from the old scanning system where you just activated your module on it and let it run until it decided it was going to. You do not need to have auto-repeat on these modules switched on anymore. You can turn auto-repeat off on your Data and Relic Analyzers. The biggest effect this has is that if you fail a hacking attempt, you can activate your module again and go back to it rather than having to wait up to about minutes for the module to time out by itself. This, again, is going to minimize the amount of time you're visible on D-scan before you can run away and cloak up again. Okay, the next one I've sort of covered already. It's about the location of the system core. A lot of people you talk to about scanning will say that the system core will be on the other side of the board from where you start. This is not true. The system core is placed randomly, so don't run to the other side of the board. And don't worry if you don't find it where you are, it's going to be somewhere on there. Yes, Johnny has just summed it up quite well on the channel. The hacking minigame is not... sorry, I lost track of what I'm talking about. Essentially, when you're hacking, being safe is your number one priority. That's what Johnny is saying, even though I failed to explain that clearly. Not against the clock, thank you, Ira. Sorry, after around 10 minutes, my brain is starting to shut down, but don't worry, we're almost there now. Okay, go everywhere clear on the board first. This one, again, we've sort of spoken about already. There is no point attacking something you don't need to. Go to all the unexplored nodes that you have access to before you start attacking things. And when you run out of unexplored nodes, attack the node that is going to give you access to the most other things behind it. If something is blocking off 10 nodes for you, and something else is only blocking off 1 node from you, kill the thing that's got 10 nodes behind it. You're more likely to find the system core there. Okay, next up. And this is one that, when I linked it in the exploration forum, caused a bit of discussion because some people don't agree with me here. In my personal opinion, the best way to not get shot while you're doing this, or at least make it hard for people to shoot you, is whilst you're completing the hacking minigame, set your orbit distance to 3 kilometers and keep orbiting the can whilst you're hacking. This means that if something does jump you, you're not an absolute sitting duck. You already have a bit of angular velocity. You have a bit of defense in terms of how you're already moving. And if you're orbiting at 3 kilometers, it means that you can instantly hit your cloak and you can get out of there, because the cloak range is 2 kilometers. Orbiting at 3 will normally put you about 3.5 kilometers in actuality. So you can cloak up as soon as something gets on grid, rather than having to move away from the can and then activate your cloak. Marcus asks, because you don't need to have the module activated all the time until you've turned your auto repeat off, can't you cloak during the minigame? Unfortunately, you can't. The second you hit your cloak, you detarget everything, and you need to have the can targeted to be hacking it. So that will fail an attempt. Okay. Next tip, and again, this has sort of been covered in the chat you guys are having with each other already. Cloaking up and running away is better than risking it and trying to grab the last can. You might end up losing a couple of cans. There will be sometimes when you have to run away and abandon something unnecessarily. But if you do this successfully, especially in low and nullsec, you'll swiftly find yourself flying around with 50 million ISK plus in your hold. And if you hang around to grab one more can, and that 5 seconds is where someone scrams you, webs you, and kills you, you'll kick yourself for it. If you see something that you think is not right or you think is dangerous, run away, come back later. Okay, second to last tip. If you have things that will that you don't need in your hold, when you walk to a site, drop a can at the warp-in point. Ships are going to be arriving at slightly different locations based on where they're warping from, but most of them will be arriving around the same location. So by dropping a can at your warp-in location, anyone else that warps in cloaked is likely to get within 2 kilometers of that can and uncloak themselves before they can get close to you. It's not a guaranteed thing, but it's one thing you can do to mitigate the chance of someone jumping you at 0, when you can see them coming 20k off because they get decloaked when they arrive at site. You will find that when you pick up the cans that have rubbish in them, it give you loads of worthless junk in your hold, so you should have enough worthless junk around that you can drop some of it. Okay, and my very final tip before we're done for the day. We don't have our own god, there is no Bob for explorers, but be lucky. Most of what you're going to find with exploring is that you will need luck on your side to succeed at this. You'll have days where you can go through 20 different systems, you'll find no sites, you'll get nothing. You can undock the next day and you'll find tons, hundreds of millions on your doorstep. So yeah, don't be disheartened if you don't find anything. Don't be disheartened if you lose some cans. Sooner or later your luck will turn, things will go your way. We have a question from Angel T. I don't understand, does the object you drop uncloak other players? The way the cloaking mechanics work, Angel, is that you have to be more than 2 kilometers away from something, your cloak to work. If you go within 2 kilometers of anything, your cloak will stop working and you will decloak. By dropping some jets and goods on the warp-in point, as soon as that person lands on grid, they're going to hit within 2k of your jets, assuming they arrive at about the same place you do, and they're going to decloak the second they arrive. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Okay, folks, that's all I have for you today. Coming at an hour and 15 minutes, which is pretty cool. Oh, Asha has a question. Hold on. Do the mini containers also decloak you? Yes, they do. If you've hacked a can and then had to run away, keep moving away. Don't move away a little bit, cloak, and sit still, because if a container comes out with a 2K of you, that's going to decloak you. You want to get a long way away from those cans if there's stuff floating around in space from them. So yeah, we've reached the end of the syllabus, as I've not on the wiki. At this point, I'm going to open the floor to anyone who wants to ask any questions. Please, go ahead. The flip side, of course, is that if no one has any questions, or if you personally don't care about listening to other people's, I am now done for the day. Thank you very much for listening. If you could drop me some feedback on the forum thread for this class, I'd really appreciate it. Or if you want to hang around afterwards and tell me, that's also fantastic. Starkovsky has asked, how badly have the changes hurt wormhole space hacking and archaeology? Starkovsky, do you mean the Odyssey changes in the introduction of the minigame? Yeah? Okay. In wormhole space, nothing is particularly changed. It's going to make your life a little harder because you can't use the local trick to try and check who's in system with you, but it means you have to watch your D-scan a bit more closely. As I'm aware, the cans in wormhole space are similar in quality to the cans in nullsec space, so as long as you know what you're doing, you can stay safe out there. I don't think it's sort of changed it much at all. Hopefully that caught the thrust of your question. Let me know if it didn't. Obharu Sen asks, are there any tips for a starting explorer? How to find sites in particular. Obharu, if you're having problems, I would recommend taking the Exploration 101 class if you haven't already. I believe there is one running this weekend, and if there isn't, I will be teaching one of those soon as well. And basically, you need to get good with using your core scanner probes, move up to the sisters equipment as soon as you can. But that question is really the remit of the Exploration 101 class, I'm afraid. If you'd like to PM me afterwards, I can give you some tips there. Darian asks, won't drop cans show up on D-scan? They won't. They will only appear locally. Nothing that drops out of those will come up on D-scan. Xanthrax asks, if someone else hacks the can, then all the cans that come out are his. That is correct. If you are not the person who completes the hacking minigame, then the cans belong to somebody else. If you are in fleet with that person, then that is fine. You can pick up their cans. If you're not in fleet with them, this counts as stealing from another player, the same as if you'd looted one of their wrecks, and you're going to get concorded if you're not careful. Marcus asks, do you find a lot of difference between hacking in lowsec and nullsec in terms of the ISK you make? It's kind of a difficult one to answer, Marcus, because the amount you earn is kind of based on luck. When I was trying to get Archaeology into doing some exploration with me, I took him down to nullsec, and we spent about 3 hours floating around finding absolutely nothing. The second he got bored and left, I found about 200 million's worth in 20 minutes. You will find that in nullsec, if you find sites, those sites are going to be worth more. I spent a 2-day holiday down in Great Wildlands the other day, and I came back with about 300 million of loot in my hold, whereas I found about 40 or 50 million doing it the same in lowsec recently. You are more likely to get shot if you're down in nullsec, though. Well, I suppose that's not technically true. People in lowsec are probably only more important because they are more habitated systems. There are more people doing the same thing as you. In nullsec, if you can find somewhere where you're the only person in the system, which is far more likely, you're going to be pretty safe. One thing you have to bear in mind, though, is that you need the skills to be able to beat the nullsec cans. If you can't do that, you're not going to make any. Eileen asks, is there a chance of valuable blueprint copies or blueprint originals dropping? There is, Eileen. If it's not a Tech 2 blueprint or a faction blueprint, I would ignore it, because no one's interested in buying those. It's more hassle than it's worth. If you see a Tech 2 or especially faction blueprints dropping, then I'd pick those up and take those back with you, because you'll get millions of ISK for those if you're lucky. Starkovsky, I don't quite understand the thrust of your question. I'm sorry. If you'd like to hang around afterwards, then I'll deal with it then, if that's all right. Johnny has sort of summed it up afterwards. When you are doing this in wormhole space, the reason I've not spoken about wormhole space today is because sites in wormhole space, you'll still find data and relic there, but they will have enemy rats in them. They will have sleepers on grid as soon as you arrive, and they will rip you to pieces if you're not ready for them. you need to take some combat ships in first to clear out the sleepers before you can get access to the cans. Okay, drop rates, obviously, I don't know, I'm afraid. I don't scan in one whole space because I'm not equipped to take on the sleepers myself. I can't answer that one, I'm afraid. Gangirl asks, does the TrueSec level system affect the looting cans? For example, does a 0.1 system give better loot than a 0.4 system? Yes, it does. The lower the true status of the system, the better it's going to be. Which means that if you are going down to nullsec to do this, you want to find the lowest security you possibly can rather than just messing around at the edges. I don't know exactly how it's calculated. I think it's a percentage chance of better drops the further out you go. Verkan asks which is worth more, relic or data sites. If you're scanning in HiSec, the data sites are going to be worth more because the relic cans don't drop anything worth having. They drop the cheapy loot. As you move further out, it becomes more negligible. The data sites will drop more stuff, but the value of it doesn't particularly change. Whereas with the relic sites, there are some items in there that are extremely high value and some that are extremely value. So as you move from high to low to null, the relic site is going to change a lot, whereas the data site is going to change reasonably static. So relic sites in nullsec, data sites in HiSec, either or in lowsec, I guess. Okay, Marcus asks, do I think the Sisters of the Cruiser, the one that's coming in Rubicon, is going to be able to handle the sleepers and then hack afterwards? I'll be honest with you, Marcus, I don't know. Like I say, I've not been out to Wormhole to try scanning myself because I can only fly the T1 and T2 frigates, and I got killed the one time I tried it, so I didn't go back. Serenity asks, she heard the hacking modules were also used in incursions for some purpose. I have no experience of incursion Serenity. I'm still quite a low skill point player, and most of my skills are going into hacking and scanning, so I'm afraid, again, I can't answer that one for you. If you'd like, though, I can ask around with some other people and try and find out. Okay, the questions seem to have dried up now. If anyone does want to hang around and speak to me afterwards, or put anything else in lecture.enu, I'm going to be here for a little while longer. But if not, then I'd just like, again, to thank you all for coming. If you could go and leave some feedback on the forum topic for this class, I'd really appreciate it, both on my presentation and on the subject of the course itself, because both me and the class are entirely new. It'd make me very happy if people have enjoyed themselves today. So thank you very much.